According to the American Heart Association, 70% of people in the U.S. don't know how to give CPR, or they've forgotten how to do it. So in an effort to help lower that number, TV7 and 4 is teaming up with local organizations to show you what it takes to save a life. Joining me now is Daryl Case, who is the manager of Munson Regional EMS Education. Daryl, thanks so much for being here.
Glad to be here.
I'm one of those people, I have to admit, I learned how to do CPR in high school, but it's easy to forget, so we're glad that you're here to give us a refresher course.
It's easy. Even if you never had a class, CPR is really easy, and we want to get that out there that people shouldn't be afraid to do chest compressions, or, and we want to give the resource out there and figure out how to get it certified if they want to become certified.
Okay, great. Now, first, just take us through the process. What's the first thing you do?
The first thing we want to do is identify to a person down on what their condition is. So we'd come up and shake and shout to see if they responded at all. And if they don't respond, then we want to call 911 or have somebody go call 911. Okay. After that point, we want to check for a pulse or any signs of circulation. So we check the carotid pulse for 10 seconds. And if we didn't find one, then we just start chest compressions. Okay. And we want to push in the center of the chest, directly over the sternum. And no matter if it's an adult, child, or infant, we want to give them 30 chest compressions. And then after that, we would pause and give ventilations.
Okay. Now, for those who aren't familiar, maybe no like medical background or anything, I know that finding the place where you press, that's kind of overwhelming to someone like me. How do you do that?
Especially if you're not used to touching patients.
Right, exactly.
So you're going to feel the rib cage. So you'd feel up the rib cage, up to the little notch at the bottom of their sternum called the xiphoid. You put 2 fingers there, put your other hand in the center of the chest, and when one hand over the other. So
you put your 2 fingers at the base of that, hand over it.
Yep. Hand on the sternum above it.
Okay.
And then, because we don't want to push over the xiphoid.
Okay.
So once you're there.
Okay.
One hand over the other, and then shoulders over the sternum, and then just push down.
How hard should I be pushing?
You want about 1.5 to 2 inches on the adult, inch to 1.5 inches, or 1/3 the depth of their chest.
Okay,
is a good indicator.
Is this like that?
Yep, that's perfect.
Okay.
And then
so
you want
to. It's not really too hard.
No, not at all. And these mannequins are pretty close to lifelike as far as a feel would go. Obviously, you don't need to push as hard on a child, and definitely not very hard. And we only use 2 fingers on an infant. You giving me chest compressions, you're going to need to push a little bit harder.
Okay.
So,
any teenager to adult would be about 1 inch. Or
1.5 to 2 inches is for an adult, and that's pretty much anybody over, you know, teenager, adolescents, signs of puberty, they're an adult to AHA.
How long do you keep doing the compressions?
Until you get somebody there to help you. Okay. And at which point you get somebody to help. We want somebody to step in for you if you've been doing chest compressions a while. We want fresh arms to come in, give you a break, and do better chest compressions, because the longer we do chest compressions, the weaker we get, and it's going to be harder and not as effective.
Does mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, is that involved with this?
It can be. Okay. For the lay rescuer, American Heart trains hands-only CPR, which is fine, because if you're, we're really studying the American Heart, and the ECC are studying the validity of oxygenating and pausing in chest compressions to actually oxygenate. So if it's that worrisome to the rescuer, just do chest compressions. Okay. You know, the lay rescuers, for healthcare providers like myself, we want to ventilate the patient because we're trained on how, but if people are leery in doing it, just do chest compressions at minimum. One
more question about the compressions themselves.
Yep.
How long do you wait in between compressions? Like, how fast should you be doing it?
You want to allow the chest to fully recoil. So the normal rate is basically we're going to do 5 cycles of 30 to 2, and then if we had an AED, we'd pause, or we'd switch rescuers. So if you and I were both here, we would switch after about 2 minutes, after 5 cycles, and then that gives fresh arms on the chest and gives the person that was doing compressions a break. So the general rate is just let their chest come back up to a full recoil.
Okay. All right, sounds good. And a lot of times you hear, and tell me if this is true, will their ribs break if you're doing it the the right way, or is that just something?
Not at all. Your ribs aren't actually connected to your sternum. You have cartilage in between. So a lot of times what you're hearing is the cartilage popping. No different than probably your ankle or knee or other joints that has some cartilage damage. So you're not breaking anything. If you are in the proper location, unless they had a trauma before you got there, then you may, but it's never going to be any worse than it is for them right now. If they need CPR, you're not going to hurt them any more than they're already hurt.
That's the #1 priority, is just the compressions.
You can't hurt them.
Okay, now if folks are interested in getting certified, how do they go about doing that?
We refer everybody to our website because our office is moving in a couple months, and that can be found on the Munson Healthcare website. And all of our classes are scheduled online, or they can contact us via our office, but that number is going to be changing, so we try to refer everybody to the website. Our classes are on there, or you can contact, we have instructors all over northern Michigan. So if they don't come into our facility to do it, we can reference an instructor in their area and they can get certified that way.
About how long do the classes take?
Depending on what provider level. A healthcare provider is going to take roughly 3.5 hours for the initial program or research, around 2 hours or so. The Heart Saver classes are anywhere from 1.5 hours to, if they take the first aid portion of it, it can be a full day if they're doing AED, CPR, infant, child, and first aid.
Okay. And how often do you have to get recertified for those folks?
American Heart recommends every 2 years for a certified program.
All right. Well, Daryl will be back in our 5:30 half hour to show us how else we can save someone's life. Until then, Daryl, thank you so much for being here.
You're welcome.